Hi boys and girls, welcome back to another STEAM lesson. We are talking all about ecosystems, about how everything in the ecosystem needs each other to live, but also our role in the ecosystem. We've been talking about the importance of flowers and how they help give energy to all of the other animals in the ecosystem. We also talked about what flowers need. So they need sunlight, they need a good place to grow, they need water, but they need one other really important thing that we haven't talked about yet, and that is pollinators. So just like the bee needs the flower needs the bee. The pollinators help the flowers grow more seeds so that they can grow more flowers. So we're going to read a book today called Flowers Are Calling. It's by Rita and the pictures are by Kennard Pack. And it talks about the ways that flowers call these pollinators to them. Flowers are calling. Flowers are calling a little black bear. No, not a bear. He doesn't care. They're calling a butterfly to dip from the air. Flowers are calling a wet green frog. No, not a frog. She likes her soggy bog. They're calling a bumblebee to look near their log. Flowers are calling a porcupine. No, not a porcupine. She wouldn't take the time. They're calling a hummingbird to sip at their vine. Flowers are calling a loud blue jay. No, not a jay. He wouldn't stay. They're calling a honeybee to fly their way. Flowers are calling a little moose. No, not a moose. What would be the use? They're calling a beetle to eat their pollen loose. Flowers are calling a rabbit to stop. No, not a rabbit. It's not their habit to call a rabbit. He might grab it. They're calling a bee fly to visit their spot. Flowers are calling a small brown snake. No, not a snake, for goodness sake. They're calling a pollen wasp with nectar to take. Flowers are calling a fat raccoon. No, not a raccoon. He doesn't care for white bloom or sweet perfume. They're calling a moth in the light of the moon. Flowers are calling a desert deer. No, not a deer. He can't even get near. They're calling a nectar bat to flap over here. Flowers are calling a busy wren. No, not a wren. He's already seen them. They're calling some children to look again. So this book kind of showed us how some animals don't have anything to do directly with flowers. They don't care about the flowers or they even try to eat them. But some animals use the flowers as a spot to land, as a place to get nectar or other food. And so the flowers call to them because they need them too. So I want you to look at this flower that we have here. And we're going to think about the different ways that this flower might call to a different pollinator. The first way that it would call to a pollinator is the color. Flowers that have daytime visitors tend to have bright colors so they can be easily found among all the green foliage. Flowers with nighttime visitors tend to be pale with a very sweet smell, making them easier to locate in the dark. Many insects can't see the color red, are instead drawn to flowers that are yellow and blue. So if we look at this flower, it has a really bright color. It's this nice bright purple and it contrasts a lot with this green. So I think that this flower is probably calling to a daytime pollinator. The next thing that we want to look at on this flower is pattern. So many flowers use designs to help the pollinators find the nectar right away. These designs are called nectar guides. How is the middle of your flower different from its outer part? Would these differences help a pollinator find nectar? So you can see on this flower, it kind of has these lines that lead down into the middle of the flower. They're really faint, but they're definitely there. The next thing that we're going to look at is shape. The shape of a flower can tell you who might come to visit. Hummingbirds can reach deep inside long, thin flowers, but honeybees have rather short tongues. They need their nectar served in shallow golden bowls like an apple blossom. So if we look at the shape of this flower, it's got a really long neck. So this probably isn't a flower for a honeybee, but it might be a great flower for a hummingbird because it's got that long neck that it says that they like. The next thing we're gonna look at is smell. Does your flower smell sweet or musky? Does it have any smell at all? Bees like sweet smells and beetles like fruity, spicy scents. Night-active moths love flowers as fragrant as perfume. Nectar bats like musky smells and some flies like rotten smells. Birds and butterflies use their eyes to find flowers instead of their sense of smell. This flower doesn't really have a strong smell, and since we were already thinking that this might be a good flower for a hummingbird, that makes a lot of sense. It attracts them with the way that it looks and its shape rather than the way it smells. Finally, time of opening. Does your flower open in the daytime or at nighttime? If it is a night bloomer, it is calling to a night moth or a nectar bat. Day bloomers are calling to birds and insects who find food in the sunshine. So this flower stays open during the day, so it's probably a flower that would attract a daytime visitor. Your challenge this week is to design your very own flower. When you're designing your flower, I want you to think about what pollinator would come visit your flower. Would you have a honeybee, a beetle, maybe a night moth, or maybe a bird? So you're going to think about color, pattern, shape, smell, and the time that it opens when you design your flower. Colors can be warm or cool. Sunny, fiery colors are warm, like yellows, reds, and oranges. Cool colors are ones that you might see in water or grass or shadows, like greens and blues and purples. Any color, whether it's warm or cool, can be bright or intense. Bright colors are the ones that flowers use to call to pollinators. So you can see here we've got different examples of warm and cool colors and also what bright and dull colors look like. Pattern in art is something that repeats over and over again. If you remember my flower, it had lines that pointed down to the center of the flower. There was a darker line and then a lighter petal color, and that repeated all the way around the flower. You can see in these three flowers that they all have different patterns and designs. Some of them use color and some of them use different shapes. All of those things point to the center of the flower and they go all the way around. Shape is an area that has lines that make an edge and close it in. There can be geometric shapes like circles and squares and triangles, but flowers have biomorphic shapes. That means that they don't have nice, perfect edges like circles, squares, or triangles. The edges are usually curvy, just like the ones in these flowers' petals. Biomorphic shapes can be a clue that something is living, like a plant or an animal. So look at the different shapes that you see these flowers making. Now it's time for you to think about the color, the pattern, and the shape of the flower that you're going to design. So you can draw it or you can make it, and I want you to think about all those different things and decide what type of pollinator is going to come to your flower. You can share your drawings or your creations with your teacher, and she will share them with me. I'll see you next time.